church for a few weeks now, so you might be surprised to see me popping up in the sanctuary. I have been a priest since 2005 and was serving as the rector of Corrindon Craig until the beginning of this year. We moved back to our family home in Seville Grove to support our daughter who lives with disability and has become increasingly unwell in the last couple of years. I now work 2 days a week for Amana Living as an aged care chaplain. We needed to find a parish where we could worship and feel at home, and we are very happy to be here. Of course, we're sorry that Brett is sick, and I'm sure we will all pray for him, but I'm delighted to be able to step in for him. Mind you, he's chosen a day when both the Old Testament and Gospel readings are difficult, challenging texts, and each deserves its own sermon or study. I hope my ponderings will stimulate your own and encourage you to read and wonder about them later. The story of Abraham and Sarah's inability to have a child is well known, and last Sunday's reading from the book called Genesis told of Sarah's laughter when the mysterious messengers from God told her that she would have a son in spite of her postmenopausal age. Before this, Sarah had despaired of having children, so she gave her Egyptian maid, Hagar, to be Abraham's concubine. Poor Hagar had no say in it. She was a slave, a young woman with no power over her own life. Sarah was married to a wealthy man, and although as a woman her power was limited, she still had more than Hagar. When Sarah miraculously gave birth to Isaac, she was happy, but she was not happy to see Hagar's little boy playing with her own son, Isaac. She was jealous and wanted her son to be his father's sole heir, so she told her husband to get rid of Hagar and Ishmael. We're told that Abraham was distressed about this on account of his son. Note that he didn't seem too bothered about poor Hagar. Hagar, lost in the wilderness, ran out of food and water and prepared to die. She left her son in the shade of a bush and walked away, unable to bear to watch him die. This is heartbreaking. She cried and wept. And then she heard the voice of an angel, reassuring her and leading her to water. So she and her son survived, and he grew strong as God was with him. Back in the 1980s, a theologian named Phyllis Tribbett wrote a book called Texts of Terror, in which she unpacked 4 sad stories from the Hebrew Bible. The stories of Hagar, Tamar, an unnamed woman in the book of Judges, and the daughter of Jephthah. All these women were used and abused, rejected, neglected, raped, or murdered. Why did this writer choose their stories? These are her words. As a critique of culture and faith in light of misogyny, feminism is a prophetic movement, examining the status quo, pronouncing judgment, and calling for repentance. The approach of this book interprets stories of outrage on behalf of their female victims in order to recover a neglected history, to remember a past that the present embodies, and to pray that these terrors shall not come to pass again. These difficult stories are not often told in church. We would all rather focus on good news, on God's love, on stories of peace and joy and happy endings. But that does not do justice to the reality of life, either in biblical times or in our own. Currently, we are, as a country, talking about the voice to Parliament, one of the requests in the Uluru Statement from the Heart. There will be a referendum sometime this year, and we will be asked to vote on whether to allow First Nations peoples to have direct access to government. Whatever we think about the voice, we need to respectfully listen to the original Australians and understand the effects our colonial history continues to have on them. The early settlers were courageous, making a life for themselves and building a society in a country very different from their homelands. At the same time, terrible things were done to the original inhabitants of the land, and their descendants are still waiting for justice. The last couple of hundred years of Australia's history might be seen as a triumph of colonialism by some, but as an unmitigated disaster by its Indigenous peoples. Abraham and Sarah are remembered as people of faith, from whom all the people of Israel are descended. But if we read their stories, we find they could be cruel. They told lies. They didn't always believe what God told them. They were human in that they were a complex mix of good and bad, faith and unbelief. The truth, like our history, is rarely straightforward. In today's reading from Matthew's Gospel, we hear Jesus speaking to the 12 about discipleship, just as he's about to send them out on their first mission. Jesus warns them that they will meet opposition. If Jesus can be called a son of the devil, the same is likely to happen to them. Jesus reassures his followers that God values and loves them, knowing every hair of their heads, but they will still be in danger. He goes on to talk about the family conflicts that will inevitably occur as disciples say and do things and live their lives in ways that disturb and anger their families. These words present us with another difficult challenge, as Jesus states unequivocally that following him takes priority over family life. Hang on a minute, how can that be right? Did he really say that? Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Yes, he did say that. Jesus' own family did not understand what he was doing and came into conflict with him. I wonder how the families of the 12 disciples felt when they left their fishing or other business and their families to wander around with an itinerant preacher. I'm sure some of them were not happy. Maybe we have not encountered serious opposition to our lives of Christian faith. Perhaps some of us have. Some of us will have family members and friends who think we're a bit weird because we go to church. Maybe some of us have encountered tricky ethical situations in the workplace that challenge us. That's about as bad as it gets in Australia, so we might think this isn't an issue for us. Taking up our cross and following Jesus is not likely to get us killed here, although it might in some countries. My challenge to you and to myself is to prayerfully consider where our loyalties and priorities really lie. Can I cope with a challenge to my cherished beliefs about Bible stories and the people they describe? Can I open my mind and try to learn the truth of our history? Am I mature enough to look at myself and my values honestly and truthfully? These are some of the challenges of disciples, and may God give us the courage we need for the journey. The Lord be with you.